we had some pretty good conversation in our Discord this week, and in a little while, shared a pretty cool thread around what makes a sustainable play to earn economy. And our team just really resonated with the content in it. And so as we are continuing to release more information about the economy for Blockleets, more information about the status of our roadmap and our updates, this is certainly an awesome first step for us to kind of talk about that. All right, so in the live stream chat, we can't share our screen. So in the live stream chat, we've dropped in the image and kind of the framework that we'll be discussing today. So if you want to follow along there, and then also if you want to just chat us questions or jump in and ask us a question, all is fair game. So, and just for some background, Nick and I work pretty closely together on all things strategy within Blockleets. And so the topics we'll discuss today are it's kind of insight into the way our team talks and thinks. So hopefully, you get some benefit from that as well. All right. So Nick, wanted to talk through the first item on the list, which I'll read out loud here, but the first sort of rule of a good play to earn economy that was laid out by the two Twitter influencers, I'll say, is earning assets shall experience ROI decay. ROI should be capped and obfuscated. So what's your take on that? How is Blockleets addressing that or not addressing that?
Yeah, and first I want to thank Maple Leaf Cap for the Twitter handle for tossing out this really sort of well thought out illustration of these 10 points. But yeah, that first one, I think it is important, and at surface level it may not seem that way because from a sort of player's perspective, it's like, oh, I buy into this thing, I should just be able to earn infinitely from, this one asset I have. But the problem with the model that works that way is that it just can't keep scaling, because if everyone just needs to have one single asset and they can earn infinitely, where is that infinite coming from? So to encourage a more healthy economy, you have to have some way where someone can't just sit on a single asset and not participate beyond that and keep earning. And in the Blockleets world, that is something that I know some of the later topics will probably dive into it more, but what we're looking to do is really, when we introduce our gear system, that's really where we can help make this a bit more true. Because right now the assets people have are golfers, as golfers can play courses, and they can earn that way. But as we introduce gear, we have the ability to sort of adjust people's earning potential based on the multiplier of gear times golfer, and certain gear, may not be able to earn forever, and so they'll have to keep sort of changing that combination of gear and golfers around in order to keep earning, which will keep the economy running a bit smoother than if everyone just sat on a single asset and didn't continue to contribute or interact beyond that. So that is something that's sort of on the roadmap, and we're definitely looking at it, as we know we can't just scale with the current model long term.
Would you say it kind of protects like players from just getting dominated by other players just like infinitely own this like really amazing asset that's like always going to be the winner? Is that the thought process behind?
Yeah, I think that's an important one too, and the main distinction there is you're avoiding someone from dominating the space without continuing to interact in it. So if there's someone who's dominating the space, but they're continuing to get new assets and exchange assets with other players, and they're just really good at doing it, I think that's the activity we want to encourage, rather than someone just finding the one like sort of god asset and then having that one asset just enable them to dominate all the earning forevermore without having to participate, and then no one else has a chance to surpass them. Yeah.
Yeah, because I read that first one and I'm like, well, it feels a little harsh for in the NFT space, but I do like, based on what you're saying, it sounds like it does actually kind of add in some player protection as well.
Yeah, definitely. One of the other interesting topics, shifting on to number two, is about input and rewards. And it's sort of the idea that input and rewards should be diversified in categories and types. So, what does that mean for you, Shayna?
Yeah, I love if you actually scroll down through the thread that Maple Leaf Cap reshared, their image around this was really interesting. And so they had lots of different asset classes, which in the NFT space and the play to earn space are also considered rewards. And I just thought it was a really interesting way to think about in-game assets, in-game like fun rewards as sort of assets. And at the end of the day, we're making markets, and the players that participate in the market, and we are participating in the market, like all of the participants are creating this vibrant market exchange. Markets become less interesting when there's only one thing to buy. So it becomes a little bit predictable, which I would say it removes the fun of having. I know everybody kind of hears a NFT hunter in themselves. There's some element of fun there, but when you start to have predictable market, everything just kind of regresses towards the mean or some average. And in play to earn games, we have to be very careful about that, because you don't want your average to be zero, like no rewards. And so I just thought it was an interesting way to talk about when you're adding complexity and you're adding rewards that build up that economy with the purpose of building up the market. Those are all beneficial things to do for the overall play to earn economy. And so, as we progress through, we're progressing through the way that we're launching gear. We will talk a lot more about that. But what I will say is that there's going to be lots of different types of gear, lots of different levels of gear. Of course, we still have the golfer market. We've got the metals market. And then we will also be adding Pro Shop NFTs, and that won't be the only things that we'll be adding. So, primary focus for us is just creating interesting markets. And this is how we'll do that.
So to quickly follow up on that one, Shayna, um, when we're talking about rewards and sort of all the different ways we can reward players, uh, are we sort of differentiating between intrinsic and extrinsic rewards in terms of different inputs can optimize more for fun versus other inputs optimizing more for leveling up a golfer, which hopefully can flip for higher, and other potentially ones just giving you direct actual hard crypto earnings or something like that?
Yeah. Yeah, so that's a great question. And I think that the answer to that question actually becomes infinitely more interesting when you're in the NFT space versus just being in like the regular digital product space. And so, in the regular digital product space, you want to have sort of intrinsic value, which right now that the way that most products view the intrinsic value is that they've improved some process that was annoying before. Like Uber's intrinsic value is that it's easier to call a cab than it's not. In the NFT space, the intrinsic reward actually translates into some level of utility, which then also translates into some level of extrinsic reward for the players. And so we have been fortunate to have a leader in place who has really pushed the value of of intrinsic value to us as the vision and the sort of the North Star of this product, because we know if we can do some intrinsic rewards really well, which right now is a fun game to play. We'll keep introducing like more fun mechanics as we go on. But that directly impacts the extrinsic reward system that is already in place. And so that personally has been really fun for me to work on.
So it's what's very similar to what you were just talking about actually is the third point about striving to retain as much economic value within the game as possible. So sort of I guess what does that mean to you, and how do some of these reward structures encourage that?
Yeah, so with any economy, you're looking for participants in the economy, and You are looking for adding more participants over time because they see that value of participating in that economy. When you start to get concerned is when people are sort of liquidating their assets and leaving the economy, and that becomes very real in the cryptocurrency space and the NFT space, and I'm sure we've all been been part of probably some experiences around as people liquidating cash, and then you're kind of left there with nothing at the end. And so for us, this is a top importance of making sure that people want to come into the economy and stay in the economy. And the game changer for Blockleets on this point, and the way that we are going to be addressing that, is through the addition of the Pro Shop NFTs, where the Pro Shop NFTs will actually allow people to own their own business and make the market decisions themselves with that business. And then as part of those mechanics, players who maybe don't want to have the added stress of owning their own business, they can join that pro shop as a club member, and play the game casually and still get revenue shares from those pro shops. And so we'll certainly make sure that those mechanics are spelled out in the very near future. But all of those mechanics of letting people own their own business in our economy ultimately keeps people there, and it keeps the marketplace vibrant. And the one thing I'll point out is from a platform perspective or an IP perspective, we are relinquishing control to the players to allow that to happen. And that's a really interesting change in dynamic that just Web3 in general brings. And so we're super excited about that as well. And so I'll move to the fourth point there too. Actually, it was kind of a good segue there. But the fourth point here is recognize users' desire to value extract, cleverly turn them into spenders. So I know, Nick, you do a lot of thinking around this, so I'm actually quite interested to hear your thoughts here.
Yeah, so this is an interesting one because I think in the sort of you know NFT gaming space where everyone wants to be a net earner, there is sort of a truth where ultimately there's no sort of money tree there. Uh, Anything that's earning has to come from other participants wanting what is being created in these digital goods, and so you have to create a section of people that highly value the goods and are willing to spend for them in order to have the rest of the population be able to earn. And so there's a number of ways to do that, and I think the most important way is sort of the way the entire sort of traditional gaming business works, where people spend money on games purely for the joy and entertainment value they have. And so if you can make a one of these NFT games that also delivers that same entertainment value, you can have a subsection of the players really interested in spending to participate in that game for fun, and their spending is enabling the other side of the economy of the people who are sort of part of the pro shops Shana mentioned, or leveling up golfers and then sell them for higher, sort of enabling all those mechanics. So it's pretty important to do, and there's two main ways. One of them I sort of just addressed with the intrinsic value of just enjoying the gameplay, but the other one is to sort of create incentives to create new assets that people will need to purchase in order to earn more. And so if you can create a loop where someone is earning at the current rate, but if they purchase this new gear or this new other item, it can increase their earnings. They're turned into a spender because they're buying that gear, which is created by another user, and so providing earnings there, and then in turn allows them to earn more in the future. So we have both the sort of traditional, play for fun game mechanic, encouraging people to spend in the system, and then we also have the other mechanic where you can increase your sort of the amount you earn based on the time you play it by purchasing more assets that have sort of a multiplicative effect on your earnings there. Um, so that's a pretty sort of a key principle, and I know it's a little bit counterintuitive that people need to spend to make it all work, but um, yeah, that's something we definitely think pretty seriously about.
Yeah, I think that's a really insightful one. And when I also kind of first read that, I was like, "Huh, that just seems a little malicious or something." But it does become very important, and I think the way that we will be doing this will, yeah, there'll be a lot of intrinsic value created, and so again, I'll sort of sneak a little alpha in here, like keep a lookout for what we're gonna do with legends. So, because that will feed directly into that. So,
So one of the next topics is really about retaining control of the finance infrastructure and then use commissions to stabilize the economy. And what that's sort of talking about is um, it's important to empower the community to allow them to create things, and that will push the economy rather than having to drive it all from the publisher or developer's point of view. And the publisher developer still needs to maintain a certain commission just to support the project and keep things stabilized, and that commission can adjust as needed. But the important thing is that is including other people in the creation and sort of to some degree the control of the economy and the market. I know Shana mentioned it earlier about pro shops and sort of guild systems, or I don't think we finalized on a name, but whatever we end up calling those. And the key thing about that is that our vision for the way gear is created is going to be very different than the way golfers operate now, where golfers, we mint them and then we sell them for initial price, and the players can purchase them, level them up, and then sell them for higher value as they're have more skills than the initial mint did. With the gear, what we're looking to do is have gear be created based on the amount of participation all the players do in a pro shop. And that pro shop could be owned by us, or it could be owned by other players. And ideally, long term, we would want all the pro shops to be owned by people other than us. And then when that gear is sold, there's a revenue share to all the people who participated in that pro shop to sort of generate that gear based on their playing effort. And the important thing there is that the rate of asset creation is determined by the player base, not by us. So it's more of a true market rather than sort of a command economy dictated by us saying, hey, we're going to, mint X golfers. And then what we would do is just keep an eye on, is there too much inflation in gear? Do we need to rotate what type of gear gets created? And adjust some of those percentages. But ultimately, it would be much more controlled by their player base than by us.
yeah, which I think is, again, just such a revolutionary type of concept that only Web3 and really only these NFT play to earn games really can ingest. And, of course, other games are making those, decisions and probably looking at similar data to us. But Nick, I love your point of like, it's based on what the players will be doing and the feedback that we're getting. And so I know we're super excited about that.
So that sort of leads into how we could create a vibrant, complex commercial ecosystem and use taxation to stabilize it. When thinking about that framework, Shane, I guess what comes to mind?
Yeah, and I think like when I read this thread, this like probably the next few points or next couple points roll into this, but I mean, I was just really excited that they were even saying like you have to think like the Federal Reserve. And that's kind of an exciting role, I think, for me and for you and Yang, the creator, because we just all love data. But we don't necessarily want to control the markets, but we want to have a focus in place, a data system in place that ultimately can help build the marketplace up on behalf of the players who are participating. I would say I probably wouldn't use the word taxation. It sounds a little like just taxation in general probably just has a branding problem, or tax season in the US right now, it's stressing everybody out. But I would say that, if we start to see behaviors that are negatively impacting the economy, that is something, and the majority of the players in the economy, we will have the measures in place to counterbalance that with some type of mechanic that at some point the value exchange it's not worth it for that person to continue that behavior. So that's what we're thinking about. We are actively putting together the data sets, the frameworks of which we will be measuring that. And of course, we will be making sure that people are aware of what we're doing and the metrics that we're looking at. So long as it doesn't create a system of like hacking, we'll have to be careful about that. But
Yeah, that is the tricky thing about trying to manage the economy, and I think that actually speaks back to what you're talking about, sort of the second topic about input and rewards being diversified. Because if you don't have a very diverse amount of types of assets, types of inputs, and types of rewards, it means as soon as something goes wrong with sort of the way one of those assets or rewards is scaling, you really don't have much to counterbalance it. So creating a complex system is much more robust and much less likely to have sort of issues if one piece isn't operating as anticipated.
yeah, exactly. We'll have many metrics, not one. So
So we sort of been talking a lot about some of the sort of hard logic and numbers and yeah, elements of that part of the economy. But one of the other aspects that's important is about appealing to emotional investment and character building, and almost a little bit like what we talked about earlier about enticing people spending money not just because they think they're going to make more money in the future, but also because they really care about the game or the art or some other aspect like that.
yeah, and this one's interesting. I'd say like in terms of block leads, we're probably a little light there. Like, obviously the golfers have their own personality, which is, I love the new artwork in season 2. I think it's super exciting. When you look at other NFT projects, there's a little bit of lore storytelling that's going on there where, we're very focused on more of the utility that you do get from owning the golfers themselves. I don't know if we will, make a hard stance of saying like the golfers themselves, you'll need to spend more on them because you have some appeal to them, but there are some interesting changes that we can't get into exactly, but what I will say is that we are thinking about the way that you would hang with the golfer that you've initially purchased at first. And so if you've bought a novice golfer, that there would be opportunities for you to continue to level that golfer up over time. And so it's not like, okay, I've maxed out my novice golfer and now what do I do with it? And that, maybe you'll have a little bit more of a longer relationship with that golfer over time through those mechanics. So can't go into it too much, but we should be making an announcement there as well. And then, of course, like we do want to make sure that, customization, those types of things that do bring that intrinsic value and kind of make the game more personalized to you are included. So those are features that we do kind of have on our backlog right now, and we are looking to scope within our roadmap. And then so number 8, I know that we've gotten feedback from actually some people in the crowd on some of this, so this will be a good one for us to talk through about what we're doing. On point 8, so actively pursue business partnerships and introduce external cash flow spending into the game. So Nick, what's kind of your take on that?
Yeah, so I think the way we look at this is actually also related to about appealing to emotional investment. Um, so, you know, to what you said earlier, Shayna, our game isn't sort of a deep RPG game or like golfer management game where you get really involved in your lives and have that same sort of aspect. It's more of sort of a straight playing the game of golf game. But what we can do is, and we've done it a little bit in season one, where if we can partner with the right people to sort of create golfers that have an intrinsic either aesthetic attachment that a lot of players might enjoy, or even just bring in sort of a celebrity factor or something like that, so that people can care more about their golfer beyond just its stats and its ability to earn. And so we did that in season one with a couple partnerships with various artists, and I think that's where it can start. But we're also looking at partnerships beyond just artists, but with other potential personalities to sort of bring in some aspects of why we want a golfer beyond just, hey, what's the cost to stat ratio and can I win the most events with it, but bringing ones that someone will say, well, you know it may not necessarily give me a huge advantage to win all the events with this golfer, but this golfer represents some sort of IP or aesthetic that I really care about, and that'll make me value it more, and that'll help sort of translate that sort of fan into someone who's introducing spending to the game in that metric. And then there's another metric I think when we get around to that, reference that whole guild and pro shop process, to where there could be potentially partnerships with bringing other communities in to run their own guild, and they're going to have to come in initially and spend to buy golfers, and they have to buy gear from other guilds to get those golfers set up, and then that'll be an extra additional hit to the economy there, or plus to the economy I should say there. And then as they translate into being their own earners, then they would go and try to bring in other communities that they would be able to sell their gear to. So I think those are sort of the two key ways we really look at those sort of partnerships.
Yeah. And it's been awesome to see in the NFT space, and probably just Web3 space, is just the value of partnerships of the other NFT projects on your own blockchain, on other blockchains, just because as we work more with those partnerships, that we're building the whole space up together. And so kind of like all ships rise, all ships rise in the rising tide. So I think that's kind of a cool concept that's really unique and different to the NFT space.
So speaking of sort of unique things about the NFT space, I guess what are your thoughts on distribution, voting right, utility, rent seek property, government tokens, all these sorts of elements that are really unique to the space, and how they might tie in with participation in the game in our case?
Yeah. So like that is a sentence. That sentence, all of those concepts listed in that sentence, they write it so casually, are um, you know, uh, pretty big features for any project. And I think we've been really focused on utility. That's always been built in from day one. Um, Governance tokens, while we don't have that explicitly right now, our team is very interested in that. We enjoy those opportunities, in some of the other discords that we're in and other projects that we're in. That's kind of fun. If you're have participated in like a DAO or a voting, platform and other projects, like, most projects are like, hey, you're just in this Discord and you're giving us feedback, or you can vote in some ways. And, I think we just naturally do that. with how serious we do take all of the feedback that we do get from players. So, I think if you're in the Discord and you're giving us feedback, you're already part of our DAO. To the degree that that's formalized, we'll continue working there. And then as it relates to the correlation with game participation, so this will actually go directly back to some of the other points that we've talked through of as we start to build this economy and these marketplaces and come up with all of the gear strategy, we do want to create a system that is rewarding people for participating the most. And so in that regard, that is a main focus for us. And so, like I said, in that regard, Blacklead Games will be kind of achieving that. And then I know I personally look at I'm in Discord every day and I look at the leaderboards every day. So, maybe I'll say I'll give your vote and feedback a little more weight if you're at the top of the leaderboards and in our Discords. So.
All right, well, let's hit up the last topic and we get to a few questions. So the last one is maintaining stability and setting stability expectation of in-game currency are equally important. So I guess what's your thoughts on the importance of the stability of, I think the first one's more sort of about the players and activity and and also of course the value of various assets, and then the stability expectation in terms of what players think will happen with those things.
Yeah. I mean, this is such an interesting point, and Blockleets does not have an in-game currency that can be liquidated for USDC or some type of stable token that can be transferred into fiat. We are looking to do that. I wouldn't expect anything from us anytime soon in that regard. But this is such an interesting point, and recently we talked to the community just about their general NFT buying behaviors, and you do start to see projects where, like Axie Infinity, where they've kind of just outpriced themselves with the way that they set up their. Um, and then you see other projects that kind of say, hey, we've got all this big stuff coming. They do a big token drop, and then, the price gets cut in half. And so, because they haven't been able to meet that hype expectation that they hyped up. And so, those are two trends that we are actively watching. We know that you are watching those trends. So I would say this is extremely important to us. And it's actually important to us even from an industry at large, because this does impact sort of the overall perception of even our game if some other games are not kind of living up to this expectation. Having said that, we do have, I would say, in-game currencies with air quotes, uh, which are the metals. And while the metals won't necessarily fluctuate in price themselves, but they will impact your earning capabilities in the future as we launch the pro shops, because your metals, as you join a pro shop, your metals will actually contribute to the liquidity that the pro shop owner has to go buy gear and then list that gear on the marketplace, and then provide that revenue share back to you. And so when we do think about in-game currency, I would say it will be metals and metals distribution. It will be based on things like how active certain people are, how many people are playing, all of those types of metrics we will be looking at to kind of, I don't know if stability is the right word, because what makes markets interesting is the fluctuation. So I don't know if our goal will be stability per se, but I would say our goal here would be fairness and opportunities to win. That would be probably the primary metric that we're looking at to create a fair marketplace.
So I think we can cover some of these questions that we had dropped in the chat now. I think there's There's a couple from Life Bowler, and I think the first one is a pretty easy answer. I'm going to answer these in opposite order, just because one of them's going to be a lot quicker. The first question is, would senior golfer actually on the course help drive the want for customization and intrinsic value? I think all of us internally agree it definitely would. It's definitely something that we're aware of, and we'd love to do it in the future. So it's definitely on the maps, and knowing that, hey, if you can actually see what your golfer looks like in the app as well as on the web or in the wallet, it definitely can help quite a lot, particularly as you get to more customized features. And there's different degrees of that. There could be, hey, just at the end of the course, there's a winning celebration, or it could be you can see the golfer through every shot. There's, a number of ways that could be integrated that we're definitely interested in doing at some point. That other question is a more sort of one there's definitely more to talk about because it's not just an easy like yes that's of course what we want to do, is really about the pro shop NFTs to block league golfer ratio. And I'll toss this to you for your thoughts in a second, Shayna, but I can say we've had a few conversations about this. I don't think we have a robust answer yet. I do know that one thing that's actually also been an internal conversation point has been, should it be based on the ratio of pro shops to golfers? Should it be based on the ratio of pro shops to players? Each player can have any number of golfers. Or should it be some sort of combination of both those variables and some sort of spot in the middle there? So I don't know if you have thoughts around this one as well, Shayna.
I don't think I have much to add here with in terms of the details that we're looking to fill in still, but we will be, talking to the community about some of these decisions probably before we make a decision. So stay tuned for that.
Yeah, and I would say I think the main thing holding us back from sort of having those conversations in depth with everyone here to date has really been, we want to sort of be able to share the more detailed mechanics of the pro shops, just so everyone has context, and then we can sort of discuss, how rare pro shops should be relative to the either the player base or the amount of golfers that are either in the ecosystem or should be active golfers in the ecosystem. So we're still working on some of those sort of details that would help give a much more in-depth conversation point. So I think that's it for the questions. Do you have any sort of final thoughts, Shana?
Um, I think this has been one of the more interesting conversations that I've enjoyed. So hopefully we can do lots more of these, and we definitely appreciate your feedback on how everyone thought this went, and then we can continue to do more. And Nick, do you have any final thoughts?
Just wanted to thank everyone for joining us here today, whether you're listening to this live or on YouTube after we post it up there. And just if anyone sees any of these sort of interesting conversations going on in other Discords or Twitters, and you're curious, we love these sort of topics to talk about. So whatever you see, just bring it to this Discord, and we'd love to continue doing sessions like this. So thanks everyone for the time, and we'll see you guys all on Discord and talk again soon.